Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another show. I'm going to be reviewing a couple videos here, as usual, and discussing a few things. Let's pull up a couple things here. I'm going to be doing this one, um, and hello. And actually, kind of the reason for the title was I caught um, a Clubhouse conversation that popped up late last night, and the individuals that put it on, I'm not really familiar with them, but it was in actually this user's clubhouse room. I think he's got the atheist club. So they started a room and it was titled something like Tom Rabbit and Haiti are new atheist idiots. Yeah, uh, pretty to the point. I mean, as far as that goes. So I jumped in there. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a joke or not. I was kind of curious, so I jumped in there and started listening. I didn't have a conversation with them, but I was listening to the conversation, and some of those individuals I think are actually featured in this video. I don't think they speak, but you can see them in the audience. Um, and I think I think they've been fairly regular, at least to the worldview, the clash in worldview kind of thing stuff. So their conversation brought up an interesting thing, and I thought it was an interesting conversation because I thought it was kind of telling about some of the stuff that's going on. I think a little bit in the community, stuff that's starting to creep up. Yeah, before I get into that point and get into the videos, I do want to say hi to everybody in the live chat already. Thank you for joining me. I know it looks like a bunch of people are going live, so I appreciate the fact that you are spending time to watch this live while it happens. Um, and I will be addressing your comments here probably before I go into the video review and then probably in between because I'm going to be doing this video here, um, which is a fairly short one. JRobin has a little run-in with Jack Angstreich again. And I don't know why this one kind of intrigued me because JRobin comes off extra weird in this argument. I don't want to say he seems extra defensive or anything, but there's just something about it is a little bit odd. Many of you have probably seen it, but I'm going to comment on it a little bit. And then the other one is a fairly recent one that Darth Dawkins was involved in. He's speaking with somebody who doesn't seem to be particularly knowledgeable about philosophy or theology or anything, is just on Clubhouse to have a conversation and is intrigued by this. And I think maybe she's been listening for a while. Um, but it kind of goes along with what I think has been going on here. And it's the gatekeeping that we keep seeing routinely from people of a theistic bent, especially the Christians. And gatekeeping gets thrown around a lot. Well, maybe not quite that often, but I think it is being thrown around quite a bit. And it can happen in some circles like this because, especially if people are getting into discussions about either theology or philosophy or natural sciences, people are, anybody that shows up with degrees in those kinds of areas, with some training in those kinds of areas, their expertise is going to give them an advantage. Uh, how that gets weighed next to kind of the entertainment value of some of these social media platforms is always kind of a tricky balancing act. And every once in a while, you'll run into a conversation like the one I mentioned at the beginning here. And if I can get it to work, if I can record it, I might record that conversation, or at least the beginning part of it, the part that I was listening to, and maybe do a review of it. Um, there are plenty of people on either side that will say things like they're frustrated with the state of the conversation. They're frustrated with people going after low-hanging fruit or you know looking for lulz cows or things like this. I probably uniquely in a position since I target I think some of the more obnoxious actors on here, but I do that out of my own interest mostly because to me these people represent like some of the like they represent the ultimate expression of the worst kind of Christians that I remember encountering when I was in the Christian community. You wouldn't necessarily see this behavior from your fellow Christians because you were on their team, but seeing it in this kind of environment where they're kind of actively uh, sparring mentally with different believers from different faith traditions and atheists and skeptics, you start seeing a lot of bad tendencies here. Anyway, the reason I'm rambling about this is because um, this would make more sense if I'd just been able to highlight that particular video. The gatekeeping that I think is happening uh, most often, it can happen on either side, but most often it's happening on the theistic side. JRobin is a pretty good example of it because he is no longer really discussing um, Christianity with atheists and skeptics. He's just trying to get them in a situation where if they're not willing to accept or maybe acknowledge that they believe in, I think the concept of an ultimate possibly is defined and loosely defined in the philosophy of religion, then maybe he can prove that they're not really atheists after all, and then bring them to Christ. I don't know if that's what he's trying to do, but in the meantime, he's basically avoiding any of the ministry side of what he's supposed to be doing as a Christian. Um, Whether or not he has a problem with that, I don't know. I mean, I honestly think that he's doing this because he likes yelling at people and it seems to enjoy actively frustrating the conversations and then feeling frustrated after he's frustrated the conversations. Um, but in fact, I heard him in another debate where he was actively talking to somebody and he was defending his stance that it has to be the Christian God. Refreshing. All of us know this, but it's hard to get him to admit to this anymore, especially if he's talking to like you know, Jack Angstreich or anybody in that kind of orbit, anyone he thinks are in that same orbit. Darth Dawkins has been doing the gaslighting thing or the gatekeeping thing for years, in the sense that he's essentially trying to establish an argument based on the fact that all facts point to his God, right? It doesn't matter that this begs the question that there's a lot of special pleading involved in this kind of stuff. He doesn't care. Well, he does care. He cares that he's not being accepted right out of the gate with this stuff. And so, despite the fact that he's just sort of jumping in feet first with that kind of thing, and he kind of is kind of what he delivers to the woman that he's speaking with in the video next. Um, it really does sound like his the proof of God is absolutely everything, including our experience of anything. So, you know, that's all you need, I guess. So much for miracles, so much for Christ's ministry, so much for his salvation, right? Like, I mean, no one can doubt God, but I guess you just reject salvation because you just want to sin so badly or something like that. I don't know. And with Darth, it's again one of the kinds of things. It's something that JRobin's picked up from him pretty good. He'll gatekeep on that as well. I don't need to get into my God. I don't need to get into specifics or the baggage of my theology. First, we need to figure out, we need to talk about how stupid you are for claiming to be something as dumb as an atheist. A title that I don't know about any of you out there. I couldn't care less if they started calling me anything else. Like, it's not my identity. I don't care that I'm an atheist. They could name me anything else. The fact that being a negative atheist, where you claim you have the psychological disinclination to believe, I'm totally fine with that too. But for some strange reason in these circles, that's off limits because that seems weak. So this is just more gatekeeping on top of more gatekeeping. And that's why these discussions really don't go anywhere. So I'm going to highlight a couple of those tonight, and we're going to start with this one. Yeah, but first I'm going to take a look at comments right here. Hello, Bob Rosenberg. Let me give a shout out to people that got here first. Reghart Van Rensburg, you were first. God equals the square root of -1. Maria McIntyre, Jack Burton, J.L. Warren, Bridge of the Divine. Nice to see you. Alex1 or Alex I. Alex 1. God equals the square root of -1 again. Algorithm. Let's see. John May. Nightlife. Dervis. Hempracer Shatterhouse. Josephus Rivero. Good to see you. I don't know if I've seen you in the comment section. Welcome. The Game 925. Ben Swartz. Cascade. Perfect. All right. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you here. I think Alex had a comment here I wanted to take a look. The way I think of it is that typically moderates aren't the problem. They're generally accepting of the typical social narrative of these guys that are cray-cray. I may have jumped into that by mistake. That might. So anyway, but if he's talking about like, sort of Christians, that could be the thing. Darth Dawkins and JRobin representing sort of a fringe, which I think is probably fair. The sad thing about it, though, is that it doesn't really take long for somebody who's relatively mainstream. If you were, say, not raised religious and you jump onto Clubhouse and list religion as one of your, specifically Christianity, as one of your interests, and you start running around, I don't know how big those groups are, but I don't imagine it would take long before you either start hearing from Darth Dawkins and JRobin or you start hearing about them. Um, it'd be kind of interesting to see how it goes the other way. If you just go in looking for Christianity stuff, to see how long it would take before you'd run into them, and if you run into people that are familiar with them, how they talk about them. Because we know that Darth has ruffled some feathers over there, and I have seen some videos. JRobin is getting routinely yelled at and chewed out for being obnoxious and cop in an attitude with people and just being overly rhetorically aggressive. So yeah, who knows? Would you count Dee Dee's and JRobin's arguments as sophistry? Uh, some of it is. I mean, if sophistry is the idea that, but I don't know if I would actually go that far because I don't think that's necessary. I mean, sophistry gets that accusation gets thrown around a lot, but I believe it's using what you know to be fallacious and bad reasoning to make, but you know it's going to make a persuasive point. I think, for the most part, Darth Dawkins and JRobin think that this is good reasoning. And sometimes their arguments are kind of consistent with other stuff that's out there in philosophy of religion. Uh, but that kind of stuff isn't all that. That's not really all that persuasive to somebody who's not already a Christian, which is kind of the problem. And if you wanted to talk about what made them a Christian, I highly doubt that. I mean, it's possible you run into somebody who became a Christian because of the works of Alvin Plantinga or Swinburne or some of these guys. Most people have that belief first and then get into the philosophy of religion or get into some of that deeper theology after the fact. That's why those apologetics are a defense. Um, so, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody out there watching, listening, if you became a believer, or if you were a believer and deconverted, but you were a believer because of a philosophical argument, because that's what got you first, let me know. I'd be interested to hear about it. I was raised in the faith, spent 30 years as a Christian, the first 30 years of my life. Um, I didn't know who Alvin Plantinga was. I didn't know who Swinburne was. I mean, I knew some of these theologians and stuff from my denominations as their names would get snuck into different tract readings and things like that. But other than that, no. Theology didn't do it. Clever philosophical arguments didn't do it. Grandstanding, bloviating, face bright red on fire, screaming that your opponent is a reprobate. Debates didn't do it. Like um, those Sunday church services would have been a lot more interesting had that stuff been going on. I might have saved a couple of the churches that I went to because eventually people just stopped going. All right, I've been rambling on for too long, so let's get into the meat of this. I'm going to shrink my image here. Same stuff applies. The video issues with this one. This first one's going to be fine. It's JRobin. His mic is always just, as loud as a thunderstorm. Everything in this one I think is okay. The next one I'm a little bit worried about because Darth is again yelling to someone holding his cell phone and transmitting it through a McDonald's drive-through speaker. So, it's not great. It's not great. Somebody sent me a link to an app that does some sound leveling kind of stuff. I've been playing around with it. I don't know if it's actually going to work for this. So, yeah, I'm just going to tell you, you might have to actually turn the volume up so that when Garry, his interlocutor, the person that Darth's talking to, or anyone else speaks, could be a little loud. Because he is very quiet, and there's really nothing I can do with StreamYard to improve that. So, yeah, for what it's worth, be warned. All right, we're going to get into this. Thank you again for everybody that's showed up. Good to see you, my Atkinson, and Jay is also here. Nice to see you. Here we go. And if I forgot everybody or anyone, apologies. So, here we go.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not speaking meaningfully about anything, okay? Because I don't know what the words I'm using are referencing.
It's a nice intro.
No,
Very nice intro.
They're falsehoods. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So are you suggesting that because our language cannot necessarily describe every possible facet of something, that utilization of a word to indicate whether something is true or false doesn't actually happen?
So when I answered this 20 seconds ago, the answer still is no. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, well, okay.
I mean,
I'm glad. I'm
do
very
you want me to
glad that's
explain
the
it to
case
you?
because no, dude, no, I don't want you to explain it to me because I asked that question specifically to point out how dumb the circles you've been going around with Robin about for the last 15 minutes because he's been explaining this to you over and over and over again. You've now just admitted that, well, no, that wouldn't be the case. Okay, well, fine. Then what's the point of you claiming that somehow the point he's making isn't valid?
Um, I don't know. I've been explaining why I think that there are certain statements that are
Friction,
good
friction.
enough
You're
that
Dude,
Friction
are
you've
has
been
good.
explaining.
degrees
friction.
in
This is a waste.
philosophy.
This
The
is a
idea that
waste
you
of.
guys
I don't
could
know.
make
Waste
some
of
like
time.
joke saying that
Look,
he's proposing and
Sean,
purporting
Sean, Sean,
sophistry.
Sean, Sean, Sean. Okay,
Sean, just
Sean.
let.
Please,
look.
just stop. Okay. There are two new atheist thugs that have joined, and we're gonna see if they can defend their falsity of God. Okay.
Could I have
So the
just a
newest
quick
thug
20
that has joined.
seconds?
So we have Sean. Hold on a minute, friction. We have Sean here. I'm gonna invite Sean up, and Jack, the atheist thug himself. Okay, to defend the.
I want to apologize. I went on a long rant and realized I was muted. That was smart. Um, got this in the got this in there. Sorry, I tried to unmute myself and it wasn't working. So apparently it did not click through. Um, the only thing that I was actually talking about was when and I'll sum this up quickly. Apologies again. Friction. My point was that Sean was sort of defending Friction. And sort of aghast at the fact that they were challenging him when he knows Friction has credentials in philosophy. And my point was that maybe Sean has missed the fact that Darth Dawkins and I think most of his followers don't treat actual credentialed philosophers with any more respect than just atheist lay people, if that's really a term. And that's really my point behind this. And the other thing that I have a problem with in this particular, I think part of the reason that they do this, uh, part of the level of disrespect that a lot of Christians specifically have about atheists is because a lot of this narrative that they are running, they are pushing, is based on the fact that they have established this idea that atheism and Christianity are parallel, that they're two different faith traditions. Atheism is just this other one, and atheism lacks all this stuff. It's an empty house. It's just it's a howlingly empty barn, and they want to know, like, why isn't there anything in this, right? for them, they have lots of answers to questions that they think are definite. Atheists are kind of comfortable with the fact that those things are just not either they're not assumed or they're just not inclined to believe them, right? Um, I think the real categorical distinction between atheism and other and faith traditions, I don't think that that's respected enough. I don't think that's pointed out nearly often enough. And I think if there's anything wrong with the discussion, especially this is part of the gatekeeping thing, is that if theists are running this perspective, running this kind of thing, there's an implicit narrative that they're pushing that atheism is the faith tradition that lacks and Christianity is the best one, right? And really, it sort of follows that any other faith tradition, somewhere in, in anything else that posits a God or an ultimate or anything like that, just accepts those things as if they're real, as if they're safe to assume. Those are weaker. So I have a problem with that. So here we go.
Non-existence.
John, you don't want to
Yeah.
throw
So
in.
hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Hold on a
Okay, yeah,
minute.
here it is.
Want to do
You
this,
want my
want to do this one
argument?
at a time. We want
I
to do
just have
this
a
one at a
quick
time.
20 seconds. Just have a
Okay,
quick
go
20
ahead,
seconds.
Friction. Go ahead and finish.
Yeah, I'm not. To be honest, I'm really not interested in continuing the stuff on excluded metal, although I think it's interesting. I really wanted to come back to, and this is what I started talking about, the argument against agnosticism, because I don't think it works, and I want to kind of explore that.
All right, we can
I
do
don't
that in
know.
a second, but I do want to hear quickly from Sean and from Jack how it is the case that there is no God. So Sean, you can go first. There is no God because.
So that's just completely dismissive from JRobin, right? Like, so Friction wants to bring up this, hey, let's get into this. What I think is the weakness to these arguments that you guys are making against agnosticism and in that position, and JRobin's like, well, no, I'm going to ask Jack and Sean the same belligerent, demeaning, aggravating, frustrating, intentionally goofy question that I ask anybody that I want to pick a fight with. So we'll waste our time with that instead of listening to somebody possibly make a good point. Like, it's quality stuff, JRobin. Keep moderating like a champ there.
Yeah, super quick. You don't want to throw in John M., my guy. Destroyer is as he's known by this
Don't care,
philosophy
Sean. We don't
guys,
care. I don't care
has
how many degrees
degrees
he
in
has.
philosophy.
I don't care if he had 5 PhDs
The idea
in different.
that you could.
All right, yeah, that idea is also that you're off the stage. That's the idea right now. Okay, you're off the stage.
Say that's not gonna work. And Sean is just like the idea that you would like. Of course he's gonna do that. Like, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what Sean's background is in either religion or any of this kind of stuff, but the majority of well, when I was a kid, I don't know so much about this, but a lot of Christians, it seems like in the U.S. tend to be cut of a particularly contrarian cloth, especially ones that are inclined to do this kind of thing, and they're not going to care about authority so much. They're not going to care about credentials. They're not. I mean, they might in terms of their own social circles and stuff. Well, this man has a PhD from Westminster, whatever. Um, then they might defer a little bit. But if it's something like this, you know, they don't care if somebody's got a PhD in philosophy or 5 PhDs. And like he said, I don't care if he's got 5 PhDs in philosophy. I'm going to treat him like a piece of crap because that person has identified themselves as an atheist, and so I'm here to abuse them in the name of Jesus.
Stage, and we have another atheist, Daniel Neer, who wants to come up too. So Jack, there is no God because.
Well, I already gave you the answer to that.
Yeah, that was a straw man. Last time you tried to do it was a straw man. So there is no God because.
How is it a straw man?
There is no God because, Jack. You have 30 seconds.
Wait, you said it was a straw man. How was it a straw
There
man?
is no God because.
Yeah, I already gave you that argument. I can give it to you again if you want.
I think this is why. Well, I don't know why he did, but JRobin's blocked me on Clubhouse. Like anytime he does one of these, if I get a notification, it's usually in direct. If I find out about him, I try to click on him because I don't think they kicked me out of the club. I don't know who can do that. This Worldviews in Crisis or Worldviews in Conflict or whatever club that they've got. So I'll get notifications every once in a while. But if JRobin or Darth Dawkins are in there, I can't. If I click on a link, it just acts like it doesn't work. So, but he was doing the same thing with me, and he was doing it with everyone else. He's doing it with Jack Angstreich too. That I'll just ask the same question again because the answer that you gave me before isn't one that I prefer to deal with. So I'm going to ask you, and it's interesting too. This is again part of this isn't just gatekeeping; it's also gaslighting, right? Like because JRobin is not afraid to say he's not going to just rest on the idea. Well, the answer that you gave me is one I don't like. He's going to say, well, you might as well not have answered me, so I'm going to treat you as if you didn't answer me. So answer my question. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to justify this point. I don't know if 30 seconds is enough to really justify that, and I'm not exactly sure what the point of that is. Like, what difference would it make if it was 30 seconds, 30 minutes, 30 days? I was a Christian for 30 years, constantly being reaffirmed either by culture, my own tendencies, friends and family, my upbringing, any of my earliest childhood memories. Um, 30 years. Never really doubted the existence of God until I was about 30. So even then, you never know. Time doesn't seem to be all that relevant. And ultimately, in the end, it really wasn't an argument that won it over. It was just the fact that I didn't think it was real anymore.
You're
Yeah,
saying
what
it's
is fundamental is
common,
not a
but
mind
how?
because.
Sorry?
Yeah, what is fundamental is not a mind because.
What's
It's not a
fundamental is
conscious
not a
being.
mind?
Now that's interesting because that's a shift in the question, right? God doesn't exist because, well, he's defined God as an ultimate and a mind. But now he's asking Jack the question, what is fundamental isn't a mind because? Recognize a problem there? He's just assumed that that a fundamental thing exists. He and Jack agree on that, and their point of contention is whether or not that fundamental thing is a mind or has a mind. Um, so yeah, and remember, even though Robin has been kind of flaky on that whole thing, I think he does believe that like he can call the ultimate a mind because by saying it's mind, it just means mind equals conscious being. I think that's what he's running with.
Yeah, it's not a conscious being because.
Yeah, I told you that a mind is a perspective on a world.
Oh no! Again, so that's the straw man you're doing again. A
How
mind
is it
just
a
denotes
straw
that it's a
man?
conscious that it's a conscious thing, and a conscious just
Yeah,
means
how is it a
that it
straw
is
man?
that it is. I'm explaining it to you that there is an awareness, right, of anything at all, of something, of anything. Okay, so there's no external world that's necessary to say that you're aware of something. If anything, you're just saying that if anything, the world would just be encapsulated. God would just be the world. Right? If the world just means it's just an abstraction for all that exists, in eternity past, God would just be all that exists. So he'd have a perspective, of course, on himself, if you want to call it a perspective. So that would still not negate the idea that God exists.
No, I
Okay,
thought God was
so
an atheist.
all a mind means is that you're conscious, that you have an awareness. That's all
By
we're talking
conscious,
about
do
here.
you mean
So there's
phenomenal
no God.
states?
So there's no God because.
Sorry, I'm trying to clarify. By conscious, do you mean that God has phenomenal states?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to defend your position.
I don't know why JRobin gets this touchy about this because I know he does read this stuff. He gets into a little bit of this, especially when he gets into it, just enough philosophy of religion where he thinks he can do some damage. I think. Um, but I think it's interesting. Like if Jack is asking him about phenomenal states, he just immediately gets increasingly frustrated and hostile sounding, acting like Jack is going to try to pull is trying to pull a fast one on him. But the phenomenal states question is an interesting one. If I understand phenomenal states right, it's something like what you feel to be the case about things, your subjective experience, what you think seems real, what you feel is actually happening to you. Those are phenomenal states. And so he's wondering if this particular being experiences those. And I think that's a fair question. Will JRobin address it? No. Mostly because I think that at that point, that's when they'll be like, no, because if there's a direct connection between this mind that I'm insisting on and it having phenomenal states, like other minds, that's when I'm going to need to pull the brakes on my little metaphor and say, well, yeah, we're saying a mind because that's the closest we can kind of conceive of it. Obviously, it has some special properties that keep it from having these weaknesses or shortcomings, right? Like,
I, I've I can give you the argument, right? So
Yeah, listen, if you tell me I can give you the argument and don't hurry up and start actually presenting your case for there's no God, the time is ticking and we still haven't heard an answer.
yeah,
It's been
so
about an hour.
and again, that just seems like I mean, it almost sounds like JRobin's lying to himself. He's heard Jack's presentation. He's heard and in fact, the argument that Jack lays out here, I think JRobin says he's already heard. So it's just really dishonest for him to say like, "Hey, I need something from you that I can make fun of."
Or since
Mind?
it's been about an hour. So listen, Jack, it's been an hour since I've
Well, you
asked your
can't
first
hear him
thug
when you're
to defend his
talking,
position.
JRobin.
All right, Altoid. Also, Altoid's still here. So it's been about an hour since I've asked your first thug to defend his position, and the time is still ticking. I
First
still haven't
thug?
heard a rational defense for atheism. Maybe the people, they all follow you around, right? And so maybe you have an answer to this question, and we can put a stop to this timer here. It's been about an hour and 5 minutes. So there is no God because.
Yeah, so if a mind exists without a world, Cartesian scenarios are possible. If Cartesian scenarios are possible, then an agent could have one set of true beliefs and another agent could have false beliefs. Given that an agent that had true beliefs and an agent that had false beliefs would be disagreeing, and given that disagreement presupposes a background of agreement, it's not actually possible for there to be an agent with mostly false beliefs. And therefore, Cartesian
That was
scenarios.
entirely
Therefore,
convoluted. So
Cartesian
this is a
scenarios.
sophistry that we talk about here, right? That was entirely convoluted
Cartesian
reasoning. So
scenarios are
there is no
possible.
God. So listen here. What we're talking about right now is God being defined in the general sense as that which is fundamental and a mind. Okay? So we're just talking about a conscious.
So Jack Angstreich has explained, and I watched a video where he was talking with somebody about this. I think it's on. I don't know if it's on the Capturing Debates one or Clubhouse Debates, but that British guy's put him up there before. I think it's about a 30-minute one, and he kind of lays out like this a little bit of this Cartesian scenarios argument, and he gets into a little bit why there's this issue with having two agents, one with a set of beliefs that's all true or mostly true, and another agent with a set of beliefs that's mostly false, and you know they have they can't, if they have any disagreement at all, then there's a background of facts, basically a something that can be evaluated as true and false in order for them to disagree, and therefore Cartesian scenarios. I think the rest of that thing was going to Cartesian scenarios can't exist, therefore that's not, that this God's not possible. I think that's where Jack usually goes with that. I think he credits where he actually gets this from, because I think he's applying. I can't remember the name of the philosopher that he said that he kind of got this from, but he's kind of applying an argument that he used towards something in this way. So clearly, it doesn't really do anything for JRobin. What I think is interesting is that he's still going to treat Jack as if Jack has not answered his question, even though what's actually happened is Jack has presented an argument that you could probably represent in a syllogism pretty well if JRobin insisted on that. He's not going to, because he knows better. And now the situation isn't that Jack hasn't presented an argument, it's that JRobin won't address the argument. JRobin, though, will not point that critical eye towards himself. He's just going to continue to blame Jack for being a sophist, or being an evader, prevaricator, atheist, scumbag, whatever.
Just being. Okay?
Yeah.
You haven't explained to us how it is the case that there is no God, other than your convoluted. It was convoluted reasoning. I want to hear a clean, clear, a clean. Do not overtalk me.
Whoa.
I want to hear a clean.
Whoa! Wow. Somebody's got. I don't know what that's about. Yeah, Maya. What an asshole way of saying I don't know what you're talking about. Exactly, and I don't know why he didn't just say that, right? Why not just? He's perfectly capable of copying an attitude, right? Like, don't overtalk me, answer me now. He loves doing that, because I think that makes him feel big in his trousers. When he's being super assertive vocally with these guys, but he's not actually. I don't know. He's not really being honest here. This is very. His behavior is questionable, at best.
Concise, plain English, substantiation for the claim that you and all the other thugs hold to, which is that there is no God. It's been an hour and 5 minutes, almost an hour and 6 minutes. We haven't heard a clear answer. So let's hear it again. Let me ask the question again.
Okay, let him ask his question, and then, oh, well, actually, how is he going to ask that question this time?
There is no God because.
Oh, that's not the question you asked him, though. The last question that he asked Jack was, what is fundamentalism a mind because? That was the last question that he asked him. But now he's reverted back to the original. Okay, fine. What precisely, like, if someone just answered him because an ultimate is impossible, what you're saying doesn't exist because it's impossible, right? Whether it's an ultimate plus a mind, that's a contradiction, and it entails a contradiction. Whether the fact that it's a mind and has these properties, that mind portion, that entails a contradiction. That mind is understood as contingent normally, and then yet this one is non-contingent. Or is it the ultimate thing, where yeah, sure it's ultimate, but what does that really even mean? How is that incoherent? Um, if you just lay it out in plain English like that, yeah, I don't think that this is real because ultimate's impossible. I don't imagine that the response to that answer from JRobin is going to involve a lot of plain English. I think he's going to start doing this incredibly sophisticated dance that will involve vague terminology pulled from the crevices of all sorts of different apologists and theologians.
You want me to
Mute
repeat
your
the
mic.
ar-
Unmute your
you want
mic.
me to repeat the
No, I
argument?
want you to give. No, I want you to give me a non-convoluted, clear, concise, plain English substantiation for your point, for your claim.
So, if a mind can exist without a world, right?
I
That
don't even know
means
what that means. I don't even know what that means. A world, if a world just refers to everything that exists, then there has always been a world because God has always
An
existed.
a world
Hence
external
this
external.
world.
That's
definition.
not what I meant. I meant a
Okay.
world external to a mind.
Okay, well that's not what a mind refers to. Then you're doing a straw man because
What
I'm
do you mean
I'm
that's not what
defining
a
mind.
mind refers to?
I'm because all a mind refers to is that you're conscious.
What do you mean by
Of
conscious? States?
External worlds are not relevant factors in that discussion. At least not as a mind has been defined.
By conscious, you mean phenomenal states?
No, we're just saying that there's an awareness. There's
Yeah, by
access
that do you
to.
mean
See, yeah, and I think the reason, and maybe if Jack happens to see this or if anybody corrects me on it, I think the reason why he's coming back to this, you mean by conscious, you mean phenomenal states, because a phenomenal state would be this being is experiencing something that seems to be a particular way to it, and in order for something to seem to be the case to a mind, there would have to be something external to that mind in order for it to seem to be. Right? That's probably a really bad way of putting it, but that's the best I got.
phenomenal
The truth.
states? By awareness,
I'm
do you
not
mean
necessarily
phenomenal
referring to
states?
phenomena. I'm not necessarily referring to phenomenology here. To
So,
to
what do you
to
mean by
empirical
awareness if you don't mean
observance.
phenomenal states? What
I'm
kind of
waiting for
mental
an answer.
state?
I'm waiting for an answer to my question.
Well, wait, you corrected me saying that a
I'm waiting
mind
for
is
an
merely a
answer.
conscious
I'm waiting
awareness.
for an answer to my question, Jack. There is
Yeah.
no God because.
You want me to give.
This is interesting because Jack, unlike a lot of us that have been asked this question, have engaged JRobin. Like I've basically just kind of repeated it, right? Like as far as it goes. Like I know that it can come across as sounding a little question begging, but I don't like his question, and I've told him that I don't, and I've told him why. But Jack is actually giving him an answer with an argument that JRobin can analyze and pick apart and criticize and take issue with. Instead, he just no, 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 just give me a straightforward answer why you think that there is a God doesn't exist. Okay, it doesn't exist because that being's impossible, right? I wonder if you told him that, then I think you're going to end up getting into you're probably just going to invite a whirlwind of stupidity on yourself. If you if What I'm more interested in though now is him having a conversation with somebody who's a pantheist and is just like, yeah, no, I agree that a God exists. I really don't agree with your definition that it's a mind. That ultimate part, sure. Yeah, we need an ultimate to ground reality, to ground everything. It being a mind, a conscious being, anything, I think that's irrelevant. There's just this kind of single greatest ontological fact kind of thing. Maybe. Um, I don't know if JRobin or Darth Dawkins have really ever dealt. Well, I know Darth Dawkins has dealt with some people who have identified as pantheists or deists, and he doesn't. Naturally, once that happens, then all of a sudden the Christian God properties they start becoming a lot more important to them.
The argument again?
I'm waiting. It's been about 30. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds before I kick you out of the room.
You
So
want
you better
me
hurry
to
up.
give the argument again?
You're wasting your time. Time is ticking.
I'm wasting my time by asking you if you want me to give the argument again?
Time is still ticking, so I'm waiting.
So you want me to give the argument again, is that right?
The time is still ticking. You have about 20 seconds now.
What is the answer to the question? I don't understand. Is that what you're asking for?
You have 15 seconds before you're off the stage. Better hurry up.
What is it that you're asking for? Do you want me to give
You have
the
10
argument
seconds now.
again? Why is it that you're not answering the question?
5,
respond
4,
and play these
3,
excellent games.
2, 1. Okay, bye, Jack. So
Does anyone else think it's a little weird that JRobin is even pronouncing the word "by" like Darth Dawkins does? That's creepy.
been an hour and 8 minutes now, and the atheists have not answered the question. Right? We haven't had a clear, concise, plain English.
Oh, yeah. No, he did answer the question. That's just flat out dishonest bullshit from JRobin. Jack did answer the question. It wasn't an answer that JRobin wanted. It wasn't one that he wanted to deal with. Now he just wants a plain English one. Okay. I find this is uniquely exhausting because if you just give him I'm waiting for somebody to give him a plain English one and it happens to be difficult and then JRobin changes the qualifications. I want you to give me an answer in just one word. I think that's coming.
Non-fallacious, honest, intelligent answer to the question that atheists are so famous for making, right? It is atheism, really. It is the denial, the claim that God exists, the denial of God. And it's been an hour and 8 minutes, right, of the year.
In philosophy, it would be the position that there is no God, because philosophy forces this issue into a proposition so that there's two sides so you can determine a true and a false. That's a limit in terms of philosophy. That's not all atheism is. I love how these guys do this. In philosophy, yes, it's that part of the position. The majority. This is the issue that I was getting into at the beginning of this, where people start talking about this on both sides, like, oh, I don't know if the quality of the people that are talking about these issues is really up to snuff. These people haven't even taken an intro to logic. They've never done a truth table. They don't understand metaphysics. Well, most people are not going to. If they're getting involved in this kind of stuff and they're interested in these conversations, it was probably because they've been exposed to some religion, maybe raised in that, have converted or deconverted or whatever is going on. But the majority of lay people in Christian churches have not taken those kinds of courses and have never done a truth table, right? So when this issue comes up, like, well, how are these people going to really discuss this kind of stuff? Where are they going to go with this? Well, part of this would be in being open to discussing not just positive atheism, but discussing negative atheism, and not just discussing atheism from a position of a philosopher's thing, and that, oh, we're now all forced to be little journeyman philosophers, and now we're going to criticize each other for not going to school, not getting, degrees in this kind of stuff. The interesting thing about how this is lining up, and I apologize if this is getting boring, is that this is following the same trajectory that happened when atheists like me, who were not really leaning so much into the philosophy side of it, but were leaning into the Bible study part of it, would come after these guys for making really basic mistakes about, like, who wrote, all the Pauline epistles, they're not written by Paul, or the Gospels present some kind of different views of Christ. Paul probably wasn't exposed to, never read, had the opportunity to read any of the four Gospels that appear in the New Testament. Just little facts like that. Things that the majority of New Testament scholars take for granted, right? It's the kind of stuff you would learn in an intro class to New Testament history. Now, do I think that the majority of people should do that, invest their time in that? No. If you can do it for free and you're interested in it, go right ahead. The ones that have invested in that or found some free alternative, I did an audit class for free, got the textbooks and stuff. It was pretty informative and it interested me. Very different perspective on the Bible from that. And when I brought those issues up with atheists, all of a sudden they want to talk evolution with me, or they want to discuss pre-sub philosophically, or they want to discuss unity and diversity, the problem of the one and the many, this kind of stuff. Like, oh, okay, so you don't want to talk about these things that you've been telling people in your religion are thus and so, and I've got the receipts to show that what you're talking about is incorrect crap you picked up from your pastor. So, okay, all right, the non-believer knows more than just what he learned back when he was a kid in Sunday school, or has a little bit better understanding of the Bible than she gleaned from looking up a website or checking out Wikipedia. So let's change the topic. So let's talk about the ultimate mind. Gatekeeping.
Years that you've been asking, but of the time I've specifically tracked here, it's been an hour and 8 minutes, and we haven't heard a clear answer to the question.
Oh,
So thank you, thugs, for proving my point to me. Friction, Altoid,
that's racist.
Tom, Sean, Jack, the ones are currently in the room, but there are more of them. I've been asking for the past couple of weeks all of the atheist thugs for that position. That's not, by the way, by atheist thugs, I'm not referring to all atheists. I'm just referring to the people of the specific gang of this atheist sophistry that we're hearing right now. And so yeah, we have about almost half a dozen of the thugs in this room right now. I've asked all of them. Well, actually, no, Sean, let me put you back on the stage because I didn't get a chance to ask you. But I've asked everyone else, and they haven't given a clear answer. So, Sean, maybe you can be the first of the many thugs of this gang who can answer the question. So, there is no God because.
Do you understand
And
what?
go ahead and unmute your mic.
Do you understand what a phenomenal state is?
There is no God because, Sean. Yeah, if I start hearing.
Oh, nice. As soon as he tries to follow up with that, yeah, JRobin is right back to the script.
Hearing sophistry out of your mouth, I'm going to start putting the timer on.
He said like two words.
Countdown timer, meaning that you're going to be off the stage. Altoid.
If JRobin's going to keep repeating the tired, a question isn't an argument, I'm going to start repeating this one and make this my mantra. A question isn't sophistry.
Don't interject right now. Sean, there is no God because?
Cartesian scenarios are possible under your world.
All right. So I'm not gonna do this convoluted thing. I want to hear there can't be a fundamental mind. That which is fundamental is not a mind. It's not a conscious thing because.
That's interesting because I'd watched most of this before. I think I watched the whole thing. I noticed him do that shift early on with Jack. I didn't notice that he did it again. I wonder if JRobin actually thinks he's asking the same question, because those are not the same question. By the way, which I mean, God does not exist because, or what is foundational is not a mind because. Very different questions.
You're saying God is a conscious thing?
Yeah, God is ultimate and conscious. He's a conscious entity. There is no God because.
And what is consciousness to you?
We've already went over this. So I'm going to start. Now I'm going to put the timer on. Yeah, 45 seconds.
It's just still waiting for you to define consciousness.
The time is still ticking. Maybe once you start answering honestly, then I can extend the timer. But right now you have now it's 30 seconds. So go ahead.
I don't think there's anything more boring than somebody doing this, playing the stopwatch bit. I mean, it's true. It's you can't really say it's pedantic because pedantic would have some kind of value to it. This is just awful, right? I mean, he's doing this intentionally to get on something like, oh, I'm gonna put a time crunch on you. You know who actually does this? Used to do this quite a bit, and I don't know if he picked it up from them or like where they, I mean, I'm sure these guys they must have some kind of correspondence school, like how to talk to people like you're a complete asshole kind of coursework. But Jesus is Lord, rebuke and reprove, absolute gutter YouTube channel. Don't go there. Just don't. I mean, it has been removed. Jesus is Lord as a channel was removed a while ago because he was trafficking in so many conspiracy theories before COVID, election, you name it. Any conspiracy will do. Now he's currently on there as rebuke and reprove. He's probably only about 6-7 videos away from getting that one yanked too. as long as he just lays under the wire. I think he's got like 50 subscribers, but he's uniquely noxious, very, very toxic. And he used to do the same tactic. I'll give you 20 seconds. Nope, 10 seconds. I'll give you 30 seconds. I'll give you 50 seconds. Nope, you're done. Click and then kick you. Like it doesn't matter, right? It's just I'm going to talk tough because that's what I want to do.
Go ahead. I'm waiting.
Maybe once you figure out what consciousness means, you'll have a clear picture of what you mean by God.
So this is
That's a good
about
point,
the
Sean.
sixth atheist tonight of the gang, the sixth atheist thug that I've asked tonight for their position, a defense of their position, and you have 15 seconds. I'll give you an extra couple seconds because I was talking. You have 25 seconds. Go ahead.
Can't even agree on the definition of a mind. I'm not sure how we can agree on the definition.
All right, now it's
of
15
God.
seconds. Now it's 15 seconds.
Well, if your definition of God hinges on your definition of a mind, you're going to have to present one.
Now it's 10 seconds. Is this
Well,
is this
I
the
guess
best
God
that atheists
doesn't
have, really?
exist, folks.
So is he even listening to Sean, or is he just counting down? I think he's just counting. And sorry if he's if I don't think that JRobin can multitask. I don't think he can multitask.
Okay. Is this the best atheists have, really? Daniel Nero, you can come onto the stage.
mean,
These people think they're formidable.
JRobin's aware that there are philosophers that have written books dedicated to atheism, atheist arguments. Like Michael Martin has one. I think it's kind of hard to find. It's like $45. I think it's mostly one that gets used in class. Maybe in classes. I don't know how many classes, college level classes would have that. They might have like excerpts of it. But yeah, like this is interesting. Like if I were to come walk in, if some atheist is like, is this really the best Christianity's got? Well, no, of course it's not. In terms of like rhetoric or logic or arguments or making a case for religion, clearly no. Right? You'd have a very different conversation if you were talking to Alvin Plantinga, or I was going to say William Lane Craig, maybe not so much, but I've seen William Lane Craig have some relatively civil discussions with people that I know he completely disagrees with. Scott Clifton, Theoretical BS, as one example, and William Lane Craig's had debates with quite a few other people where I don't know. I'm not that big a fan of him, but.
They think they're
Interacting with
formidable.
people.
They think that they're a formidable threat. No, actually, I'm interacting very finely and perfectly with them.
No,
and
you're just
they don't want
counting
to
numbers
defend their
instead of
position.
responding.
Yeah, I'm counting numbers when they decide that they want to be dishonest, and then I have to force them, right?
So you assumed they were dishonest when you asked the question, right? Like he's admitted, yeah, I'm just counting because they're going to be dishonest. Like, so you weren't listening to the answer? You just assumed they were going to be dishonest? Like how color me confused, but JRobin, how are you going to be able to identify the answer when you hear it?
Through counting, right? Through counting on the timer when they're going to present their case, and then I'm going to count down, right? Because I'm not going to waste a lot of time, right? I have all day, but I'm not going to waste time.
All right. There's that one. So I'm going to... I had another one popping in. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for that one anyway. So, yeah, JRobin not coming across real great. Really just doing a bad job and then just kind of descending into I'm going to count you out while I wait for the answer that is going to magically appeal to me. I really don't understand how that's supposed to work, but let me get this screen popped up here. This camera makes me look extra pink, which is not a cool thing because I'm already kind of pink as it is. Let's see. All right. So this one here, this one is, again, from Clubhouse, probably in that same group. Darth Dawkins talking to a Clubhouse user named Garry. I don't know how many points are going to be on this one, but it sounds like, and Alex actually in the live chat will be able to identify some of this stuff from early on. Some of what Darth lays out for this particular Clubhouse user sounds like some of his old school stuff. So Alex, if you do pay attention to this part, if you happen to see this, it sounds like some of his older school The stuff I used to hear from him when I first saw him like popping up in like the Google Hangout days. So let me get back here. Let's see. Wraith Knight writes, I wasn't aware JRobin could single task, let alone multitask. How does he breathe and act arrogant at the same time? Yeah. JRobin makes Craig look like a combination of Oscar Wilde and Socrates. Yep. I thought there was another question up here. Perfect. It said, even the terms positive atheist and negative atheist have problems. They make it sound like they are addressing two different versions of the same general thing, which is not the case. Yeah, and that's a neat perspective on it too. I actually think the positive and negative atheist things, when they're talking about kind of the psychological state, it's interesting to me to see like the advancements that we've had in understanding how the brain works, how the mind works, how it forms beliefs, how a lot of a lot of these just old ideas, these outdated notions that we had, right brain, left brain, not a thing. You got a reptile brain and a higher brain, not a thing. So despite the fact that we're making these advances all the time in neuropsychiatry, neuropsychology, neurobiology, it's interesting that when it comes to this kind of debate, right, especially when it comes to framing atheism, the psychological, like they'll make the distinction that, okay, well, lacktheism or whatever, that as a psychological state, fine, right? And you could use that as a sort of plain language way of describing your position. Yeah, I don't believe in gods, right? Or I lack faith in anything, right? Or whatever. And you can kind of do that. When it comes to philosophy, like things that I pointed out before, you can't do that. You want to put them into this proposition, true, false, whatever, Um, but the issue with that is that it seems the way that this is being treated, not just by theists, but mostly by Christians, is that that's the only way to really treat it. The psychological thing over on the side, that's incidental. That's just not. That's a much lower tier. That's too mundane. That is beneath us. But we want to talk about this philosophy part of it. And I don't know that the philosophy aspect of it has really kept up with the brain science. Um, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that philosophy gets left behind on something major, thanks to advances uh, in actual, physical sciences. So, all right, folks, let's play this one: Darth Dawkins versus Garry. And again, warnings and apologies. Darth, again, mic quality is not good. I've got this cranked as far as it can go. You probably will have to turn this up a little too much. He is a little bit more intelligible if you have headphones on, but yeah, here we go.
We could give her verbal references to proof for God all day long, and she would reject it. She adopts the not God world. So what's the...
He's going to talk there. OMG, look at the pre-supper roster. Holy shit, yeah. Matt Yester's in there. Tone Loke's in there. Theo might have actually started this room. Redefined Living. I don't, and I think he must have been talking with Vant, who's currently muted that one. But yeah, this lineup will change a little bit. Not much, but a little.
The proof for that? What is she going to say? An absence of evidence for God? Well, how does she know that all the things she's acquainted with doesn't stand in causal relations to God? See, this is all they have is their subterfuge, their obfuscation, their prevarication, their bickering, their dodging, and atheist cliches and platitudes. That's all they've got. No wonder they uniformly behave so badly. No wonder.
Uniformly. They uniformly behave so badly. So the next time you hear Darth Dawkins say something goofy like, "Oh, well, not all atheists do this. It's not all of them." He just said, uniformly, we behave badly.
We'll give you another chance, snail lady.
I'm not aware of this Clubhouse user. I've never heard. I had not heard of her until this particular video. Apparently, she has talked to Darth before. This is not the first time they've talked because he refers to her as Snail Lady. So, Space Lord, yeah, thanks for that. The PBS Spacetime YouTube channel has a great video on the physics of consciousness. Yeah, I would be interested in that. Thank you. Thanks for that recommendation. Someone really needs to ask him why does he steal from the Jewish worldview?
Go
Do
ahead.
not, do not call me honey. That is disrespectful. Agreed?
Do not be rude to me. That is disrespectful.
I'm not calling you names, though.
Why can't he just accept that? Right? Like he immediately has to make it about himself. This guy's the worst.
You are
And I
being,
am.
you were rude and obnoxious the last time you were up here. So if you are laying down a standard of being polite and you feel that that's being rude to you, I won't call you honey or sweetheart. But
Thank you.
you are not going to be rude either by bickering with me and over talking me.
I'm coming up here open. So you said that you could give me examples that prove your God world.
Yeah.
I would just like to hear them.
Were you not listening to what I just said? I said if there are facts, facts can only exist if they are revelatory and indicative of God. If you reject that claim, you don't have instantiated facts.
Okay, for argument's sake, I will concede that for there to be facts, that God must exist. So you can give me millions of other facts if they all base on God, correct? To show me, in fact, that God does exist, right?
In a world where God is and he creates the world and he purposes it that there are facts, which means that they possess intelligibility, okay? They will then be reflective of and indicative of God because he purposes that.
Okay, so tell me some of these facts.
It doesn't matter. It could be any fact. It could be the fingernail on your left pinky. Okay. In further to be any fact at all, let me give you an example. Okay.
Oh boy.
In order to have a fact at all, and for it to possess intelligibility, there must be some things in the totality of existence that do not change, that will instantiate and sustain the factness of a fact. Do you accept that?
Doesn't this kind of sound like Aristotle? Didn't Aristotle hold to this notion of like forms? Or maybe it was just Platonism. This idea that there's these unchanging things, and everything that we have in this world is just some minor shadow of them. I'm kind of fascinated with the fact that maybe like the foundation of Darth's entire Christianity is ancient Greek philosophical thinking.
I accept that you have to have a basis for a fact, yes.
Is that an answer to my question? Is that a yes to my question?
That if you have a fact, you have to have something.
In order to there to be.
I haven't heard it yet, as what Jar just said, affirming the consequent. I haven't heard it. He's gotten close, but I'd have to like probably pause it and break it down to say like, okay, that part I guess is P. There's Q. But maybe here he's going to actually complete the whole circuit.
Even a single fact, and that the fact possesses some intelligibility. There must be something that is itself, that is unchanging at a worldview level, that is providing for the fact that other things don't change, so that there can be facts.
So let me paraphrase just to make sure I'm understanding.
See, this is very different. Like I've heard this sounds really old school precept to me, because most of what I'm used to him attempting to argue is something like a mutation of a modal ontological argument, or riffing on a contingency argument. But this seems to me like this isn't just that there has to be this thing, for foundationalism, that everything is contingent upon, right? Yeah, or everything derives from. That thing is actually everything that comes from that can be instantiated by, somewhere there is a perfect apple in the mind of God. And so when we refer to apples here, the reason that they're an apple in any state of growth or decay or whatever, they maintain appleness as a fact because that is what they are in this perfect realm. Um, you don't need a God for that. You could just posit that there's this perfect realm, and from that realm, we are in some kind of derivative realm where we're kind of a shadow of it. It's a kind of a bad copy of a copy kind of thing. Um, but this just seems like ancient Greek stuff to me. So I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what from Christianity I'm supposed to like. Where in the Bible is this philosophy entailed, other than just like God is the Alpha and the Omega and the creator of all, right? But not exactly like this.
You. So you're saying that I need to have a solid reference for the facts to be true, an unchanging reference.
No. I didn't say for the facts to be true. I said in order for something to be a fact, and for that fact to possess intelligibility,
Mm-hmm.
there must be something that is fundamental or metaphysically primary, that is itself absolute and unchanging, that in turn instantiates certain other things, fundamental
Stop. Hold
parameters
on.
that
And can you define instantiation?
I was just going to ask him about instantiation. I guess the fact that he's kind of doing this whole thing, like I get that from the perspective that you're trying to say, like, well, a fact is an abstract, or if you're referring to something like I was to a thing or something like that, I guess. Um, but this notion that there's just one thing that settles the definitions for all of these things is sort of reaching, right? There could just be a perfect exemplar of everything that we refer to in an alternate realm. So when you refer to a tree, somewhere in that realm is the perfect example of what a tree is, or however that exists, and that's what our facts of trees are grounded on, the true form of it, not, well, God had an idea about what a tree was going to be, and in his mind there's this perfect one, and the reason that we can refer to these ones is that it corresponds to that somehow. Like that just seems like it's reaching this. And if anybody knows better, I mean, it does sound like Platonism, but it also sounds like it's being combined with something else. And like I said, this sounds familiar. It sounds like something he used to kind of truck out early on, years ago. Haven't heard him really approach it from this angle before. Um, Mostly because the angle. It seems like when he changes his emphasis, you see a completely different philosophical train of thought get ripped off. It's odd. I think maybe he just thinks he's changing emphasis, but it's like, no, this is very different than like a contingency argument, or even his kind of botched up modal ontological argument.
For me.
it means to institute and secure that something is the case.
Okay. Can you try to keep everything to obviously my vocabulary is not what yours is. So you can kind of make it simple. That'd be
I'm doing
appreciated.
fine. How are you?
There must be something.
It wasn't me, folks. No. That was Heath.
That is itself unchanging, okay? That institutes and secures that other things do not change.
Okay.
So that there can be even one fact.
Okay.
Now, so that would also include things like identity.
I don't understand why that's I don't get why that's a necessary thing. Mostly because facts. If facts are just abstracts, right? There's a difference between us referring to a car and the car itself. And I'm kind of wondering which one he thinks is going to. Do they both require the same amount of ontological, foundational structure in order to be justified? Like, it seems to me that if this being is providing for the ontological reality of stuff, like the tree, and I have the capacity to experience that tree, and we name it the tree or whatever, whatever that treeness happens to be is contingent upon our language, on our thoughts, on our apprehension of or perception of that tree. I don't get why that would be contingent upon that God as well. That's contingent upon us. But Darth tends to roll the stuff back and think like, well, not only is the fact God, but even your ability to recognize, the fact, what that fact is based on is also God. It's all God. Um, I don't know why he doesn't just like go all the way through and just say the thoughts you're thinking belong to God.
Entity over time. So when you look at the apple on the counter and you look away and you refer to that same apple again, that's the same apple you looked at 1 second earlier, or that it doesn't change within a split second of the time that you watched it. Okay, that's called continuity. Okay.
Okay.
Now, so in order for there to be a fact, you have to be the
That apple has in fact changed.
same person that you were a second ago. That doesn't mean that there can't be certain things that don't change about you, but that there are certain things that don't change from moment to moment. Okay? And for your mind to apprehend that the fact in question still persists. Okay?
Okay.
But can't this also be explained in terms of just temporal scale? I mean, I age slower than an apple, especially a picked one that I've bitten into and I've set on the counter, right? Within minutes, you can watch it go from whatever the original color was under the skin to a brown as it starts to oxidate. Right? There's a definite increase, right? That reaction happening in real time that apple is in a perpetual state of change. So are we. The idea that like, well, what makes that apple apple? You're not rotting away, are you? Actually, yeah, you are. You're timing out. You're on the clock too. But there are things that happen at a scale we don't perceive changed in the same way. So I've really never really quite understood why so many Christians seem to um, wrestle with that issue that you are not you are a dynamic thing. You are not static. And the one thing to keep in mind too that Darth is talking about this. This is the man that when presented with the ship of Theseus as a thought problem, basically decided that there's no problem. I think he said it's the same ship. Or that it's not. I can't remember how he decided, but he basically Darth declared like, nope, that's the ship of Theseus has been solved by Darth Dawkins. So I mean, take what he says here, with a big grain of salt.
Or that, okay. So now, if there is nothing that is going to be acknowledged at all that is fundamental, that is absolute, that is unchanging, then there can be no factness. Now, do you agree or disagree with that?
I need to think about that for a second. So you're saying that there has to be something that does not change ever to have facts, because we need like a base, like a starting point, if you will. Is that
when you and I talk, even if it's on trivial things or non-trivial things, it presupposes that there are certain things in the totality that remain the same while other things change. On the other hand, if everything was changing, then you couldn't speak about factness or intelligibility for anything.
Everything is changing, though. Like, this is something I simply do not understand. It's literally changing all the time. We are on a planet that is hurling through space. Like, it's actively falling, right? Not flying, not, I talk about it spinning, but the whole solar system, everything is in constant motion, in constant change, constant flux. So how does he reconcile this point that he's attempting to make with, oh, wait, no, I think I get it, right? God is what sustains it. Because if it weren't for God, Darth wouldn't be Darth 5 seconds from now. And his name would just keep changing. It would just be random chaos. Everything sped up into fast forward and just timing out left and right.
So factness requires that there be something fundamental that is unchanging, that is implementing or instituting, that other parameters don't change, so that there can be a fact.
Okay. Now, why can't we base facts on the laws of science? Why does it have to be God?
Well, first of all,
Either if you're going to invoke the laws of nature, or the uniformity of nature it is called, is that absolute? Are they absolute in and of themselves? Are they eternal? Are they without beginning? Because if you don't identify that it is such, then that doesn't address the question. Okay?
So what if she just did? What would Darth do if he was talking to somebody that did believe in that worldview? That everything represented in this world has an ultimate in another realm. But there's no consciousness creating it or anything like that. This is simply just a correspondence. Our realm, our universe, our whatever is attached to that, so we get some semblance of it, but it's imperfect. I mean, that would be consistent with what he's talking about. So, and it would also sustain that identity over time. No God required.
Number two, you won't even be able in your not God world to defend that there are laws of nature.
Why not?
So are the laws of nature that you invoke, are they eternal and absolute in and of themselves?
I mean, obviously, you know what side I'm coming from. So I would say that there are laws of nature that, yes, would have to exist forever.
So the laws of nature necessarily have always existed.
I think she kind of walks into a little bit of a trap here. Not that it's really a trap. I think she's being honest as best she can with this particular topic. But yeah, perfect. Darth's not going to get into it, but this leads into the ship of Theseus. I'd not realized that Darth had ever publicly addressed the ship of Theseus. Why am I not surprised at his response? Yeah, I wish I could remember what it was. I'm pretty sure he said it's not the same. If Theseus' ship is sailing, and you have to swap out all the parts by the time that you've had a ship at the beginning of the journey. By the time the journey ends, everything has been replaced on this ship. Just from repair. Is it still the same vessel? And I think Darth's answer was no. So I'm not the same person. I will not be the same person in the next few minutes when the majority of the cells that I am now die off and are replaced by new healthy ones, I suppose.
I believe so, or we would have noticed a change.
Okay. Well, here's the problem. Okay, do you believe in the Big Bang?
I do.
Okay, so logically, prior to the Big Bang, was there acoustics?
Acoustics? You mean sound?
Yeah. You understand Stephen Hawking, who was an atheist, said at the Big Bang, logically prior to the Big Bang, all laws of nature break down. There are no laws of nature to speak of. So the bottom line is only there are laws of nature are certain regularities that you believe will continue in the past, in the present, into the future. But here's the problem. Okay, some of them exist because of past events. They come into existence, so they haven't always existed.
That
so
doesn't
you can
make
you can't maintain that all laws that you will conceptualize are eternal.
No, I'm not saying it all.
So because do you know what the heat death of the universe is?
I'm sorry, the what?
The heat death of the universe. Do you know what that is?
The heat death?
Somebody brought this up.
No, I'm not an astrophysicist. No, I do not.
Okay. Conceptually speaking, given enough time, everything is breaking down. Everything is moving from a state of order to disorder. Some things more quickly than others. Some things much more slowly. So
I don't think that's accurate, that they're moving from order to disorder. They're not flying apart. I think that's one of those ways that these guys kind of shorthand their understanding of entropy, and I'm pretty sure that's not entropy. I'm not a physicist, but it's not my area of expertise. But that just seems kind of clumsy.
For example, I'm sure you've heard of a half-life of decay of certain elements.
Yes.
That they break down. Okay. Now, conceptually speaking, from a scientific realm, eventually all these atoms will decay. They will break down. They will cease to be atoms. Okay. And that's what when they cease to be atoms, they're losing order. They're moving from order to disorder.
But atoms can change.
No, I don't. No, it's not about going from order to chaos. I don't think that has any bearing on it. But yeah, this notion of getting into, like, I understand his point when she's trying to say that these laws were eternal or something like that, and he immediately wants to appeal to something like the Big Bang, because with the Big Bang you have a singularity in which those, basically physics and math just break down. Um, I you could take his point. Okay, the laws of the universe might not be eternal. And she can easily just kind of get away from this and be like, okay, well, they're not eternal, but those laws, as our universe exists now, since the Big Bang, those laws, those physical interactions that are happening that seem to have some kind of regularity, um, are providing for the reality that we currently experience. I don't understand why that would be. I guess for Darth that would be insufficient because those laws wouldn't be eternal, and since they're not eternal, they lack some ability to uh, keep everything. To make Darth Darth, and make Garry Garry, and make Apple Apple, and make facts facts. Um, Even though his acknowledgement of this kind of thing is that they're constantly, everything is changing all the time. It sounds like to me that the easiest way of explaining this sort of unity over time kind of thing is that it's a convention of our senses and language, rather than getting into some weird metaphysical justification for what sustains the appleness of apples.
Into other things.
You're not understanding, okay? Given enough time, the atoms from a conceptual point of view will break down. Okay? Not just uranium, not just
I do want to point out at this point in the conversation, this started out with her she wanted proof of his God. And he seems to be trying to debunk certain aspects of natural science, which he doesn't seem to understand, in order to prove God.
just lead. All these things will eventually break down. Okay?
Into what?
And that would into their subsequent lower parts, if you will.
So now, they're going to break down into
I'm trying to
quarks?
explain something to you as a concept.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Whatever. It doesn't matter whether it's quarks or not. The bottom line is this. In science, if you believe in science and laws of nature, two of the most fundamental laws of nature are that the amount of matter and energy remain constant. Okay? That's called the first law of thermodynamics.
Yes.
And the second law is called the second law of thermodynamics is the law of entropy, that things in a closed system.
I thought he was going to say the law of excluded middle. I could have swore that's what he was going to go with.
To move from order to disorder.
Okay.
So the heat death of the universe is that eventually everything in the universe will result in a maximum disorder. Okay? In other words, there will be no order. Everything will break down. Okay. Now, when you have the heat death of the universe, there won't be any laws of nature. Okay? So everything is breaking down, moving from order to disorder.
Well, no, I don't. Why do the laws of nature cease to be at that point? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Wouldn't they just change? I mean, if the system gets to something so radically different, like the best that any physicist can do at this point is sort of like speculate about what the universe or whatever pre-universe was like, before there's only so much we can do with our math. So the idea that there's just nothing before then is a massive bit of lazy speculation. And then to assume that, well, after heat death and everything just blinks out of existence and the laws of nature just don't work. Like, and again, he's talking about the laws of nature like people would talk about animals they saw on safari or something. This is really, really bad.
So you can't have that as being eternal. So you're going to have to appeal to something else. The great deal of the laws of nature, laws of nature in large part are dictated by certain states of order relative to other states of order.
But again, he's imposing that on her. Notice this. He's imposing like, well, you need to have something eternal. So I'm going to prove my God by proving the necessity of this eternal thing. And if you can't come up with an alternative better than mine, then mine must be true.
So you could not defend that the laws of nature are absolute and eternal.
Hold on, can I speak?
Yes.
Okay, so I did not say that all laws of nature were necessarily eternal. So if the second law of thermodynamics is eternal, then we're all going toward chaos. So what's the problem? I don't need a God if that is a constant.
If you say you don't need God, right? You saying God is not necessary.
In that
And
case,
that, right? Okay. So are you asserting that something else is ultimate then, rather than God? Because the only way that you
why
can
does
say
there
God
have
is
to
not
be an ultimate?
why? Because
A better question.
if you disregard that, you have no basis to affirm anything. Then there will be no fundamental reason why anything is.
So,
According to him. But he rarely ever brings up the reason why this is the case. He just insists that this must be the case. Well, if you don't have an ultimate, then there's no reason for anything. Like, okay, so is it consequentialism that, like, are you appealing to the consequence of that? Like, well, if there isn't an ultimate thing, then everything is just chaos, and there's no point to anything. Like, I'm not exactly sure what Darth's reason is behind this. I know that there are a lot of kind of obnoxious and kind of toxic believers that get into this whole thing where if there's no God, then everything just reverts to a kind of mindless nihilism, and they could just, kill, murder, steal, kill kind of thing, murder, steal, kill. Whatever the whatever chaos they wanted to visit on the world would be ultimately meaningless, right? There's no point in obeying any rules or laws. Those are just meaningless conventions. It's kind of a childish version of nihilism, but like in order for any of this to have meaning, it has to be grounded in an ultimate, which I find telling because if there isn't an ultimate, then nothing matters. Like it's one or the other. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like so you're saying that a world in which there wasn't anything, like let's say it was demonstrable that an ultimate is just. I think the notion of an ultimate is incoherent, but I don't automatically think that that entails a meaningless world. It's just wild to me that he kind of holds to this at the tender age of 60 something.
I would say that, and I cannot list which because, again, I'm not an astrophysicist or a physicist for that matter, but the laws of nature that are eternal,
Where'd
the
you get
laws
that
of nature
from?
that,
Where did you get that from?
if you asked me if I believe that some laws of nature, well, you asked me back and forth. So I'm claiming that some of the laws of nature are eternal
Okay.
because I have
What
no
is
reason to believe
what?
otherwise.
Okay, that's an appeal to ignorance. That's it. That's a logical fallacy. Okay.
What? Wait, why? You don't have any. I mean, how would Darth react to a Christian saying that, of course I think a God exists because I have no reason to believe otherwise? If a believer made kind of the same claim that, like, kind of different than what a lot of atheists, well, I haven't seen any evidence to convince me that there is a God, so I'm either suspending judgment or I'm inclined to think that it's not real. What if you're a Christian, you're a person who's just like, well, I don't see why there wouldn't be one, so there must be one. I'm inclined to believe that there is a creator God, or maybe even creator gods. Darth's quick on the whole, well, that's just an argument from ignorance. Yeah, might be.
I'm not perfect, are you?
Okay, the issue is not perfection. You just committed a logical fallacy. That listen carefully. It's called an appeal to ignorance. That a proposition is to be reckoned to be true because its negation is unconvincing, or you don't have a reason for it. So your defense that the laws of nature are eternal because you don't have a reason otherwise is a non sequitur. That's a logical fallacy.
So naming my mistake is doing what for this discussion?
Okay, now you did not instantiate that laws of nature are eternal. You asserted that they were eternal. Now prove it to me. Didn't you say to me earlier, prove to me? Did you not say to me, prove to me that God exists?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what she wanted. So Didi thinks there are laws of nature, but thinks they are prescriptive. He's no longer doing an internal critique. Yeah.
Okay, but you're just answering.
Did you say that to me? When I ask a question, I expect an answer. You can speak, but when I ask a question, I'm expecting an answer.
You're raising
your voice.
Very...
That's because you keep on over talking me. When I ask a question, I expect an answer. Did you not say earlier, prove to me God exists?
Where the hell did that come from?
I would like to hear your argument that God exists.
Okay. Did you not say that to me?
I'm pretty sure I did. Might have typed it, but yeah.
Okay.
I would like
to
prove that God exists.
So the laws of nature for you make God unnecessary. Is that correct?
As far as I'm aware.
Okay. So the laws of nature are your ultimate. Okay. So we either have God or the laws of nature, which are to be considered to be ultimate. Now, your criterion of belief, in order to believe in the ultimate, is that it needs to be proven. Okay?
No, but that's an interesting connection. He decides that what she holds to is her version of ultimate, and then goes on to describe that as your concept of ultimate is something that has to be proven. Nothing about this has been instantiated, right? And most of what she's been answering, I think, is just really to kind of go along with the conversation. So what he's doing here is this is extremely sloppy and very dishonest.
That's your criterion. Now, would you please prove to me that laws of nature are eternal? Because if you don't prove it, then you're violating your own criterion of belief. So prove to me laws of nature are eternal.
Wait, what? So that's how he thinks that he can get around that. See, this is one of the things I think is funny about that, because these guys honestly will do this very, very quickly, where if you say that you don't believe in an ultimate, they'll try to say, well, because you just asserted that fact, it is the case that you must be holding to some kind of ultimate, because they do in their worldview. This is kind of what Jack mentioned before. This is no longer an internal critique. This is him superimposing aspects of his worldview onto hers, right? Which, again, might be fair if he admitted that she doesn't have her own worldview. Because he doesn't believe that. That doesn't theologically follow from his other positions that he takes. Especially when somebody tries to call him out for doing stuff like this, like, you need to be consistent in external critiques and internal critiques, Darth. And then he gets pissed off and frustrated because he knows he doesn't have to, because he's lying at the beginning. He doesn't believe in multiple worldviews. There's just one. So he's got Garry in the same situation, and it's kind of funny because I don't think she's really committed to most of the stuff that she's saying. She's just sort of, like I said, I think she's just kind of going along to get along, which is fine. She's having a casual conversation. Professor Dingus here thinks that he's onto something here, and he's really taking her to school. And he's already gotten frustrated with her once, so I'm waiting for him to blow his top again. I'd listened to this before, but I hadn't made it to this point, so this is all new coming up for me.
But I thought the reason I came up here was for you to prove to me, not to prove me wrong.
You are dodging, as most atheists do. You stated to me, prove to me God exists. You are now asserting that God is not necessary because laws of nature exist, and the laws of nature are what is fundamental, ultimate, and eternal. Now,
Darth,
would you please, have you proven that?
I came up here.
See, this, and he's getting ready to blow right now. That's exactly the point. He's done this with almost everybody. Like, he did this with me the last time I talked with him, because what he he talked about it after he kicked me, was that in order for Darth, in order to be satisfied that God is contradictory, you'd have to point to another ultimate that God contradicts. I think that's kind of how he put it, which is just an odd thing to say, right? Like, it's like, no, the definition being put forward about your God, there's contradictions within that definition. Like, no, he doesn't want to believe that. He wants to think like, oh, so what you're saying is you think there's an ultimate out there that doesn't contradict. Well, what is it? What's your ultimate? Like, I don't have one. There isn't one. I think the concept of ultimate is irrational or incoherent from the jump. There may not be one. Maybe there is one, but if there is, I don't think it's going to be intuitive, and I definitely don't think we can suss it out using a human language.
If you dodge the question one more time, I'm going to kick you from the...
With the exception of math. Math might be able to get us that is a human language. I had to correct myself.
Stage. Now, your mission, should you choose to accept it, prove to me that the laws of nature are eternal. I'm
because
asking
they
you
have
to
never
follow...
changed.
Oh, really? How do you know that?
Because I trust the scientists that go before me that know more than me.
Make that statement.
Ooh, mistake, Garry.
I can't make a statement that I trust someone more knowledgeable than me.
Scientists who...
Oh, now she's gonna get Darth into it, like he's gonna, like, that's not what scientists represent. Oh, Garry. Now again, I am being completely sarcastic here because I don't really think you shouldn't, I mean, you might be able to, if you're having conversations, people are going to say dumb things. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that. It's having conversations with these kind of gutter trolls that causes an issue because they really do think that you can win and lose at chatting. But now watch him blow his top here because for reasons I don't entirely understand, I guess he's like, uh, this seems to me, again, getting back to that thing where I think they're kind of treating atheism like a religion. By her saying this and maybe being wrong about science, she's wrong about her own faith, right? The scientists are her priests, and she doesn't even know what the priests in her religion say. I really think Darth kind of approaches the world like this.
Make that statement.
Okay,
There
well
are no scientists. Listen to me carefully.
then Darth,
And I
why
listen
don't
to a
you
lot
tell
of
me your
scientific
side?
lectures. There
Why
are no
won't you?
scientists out there who are credentialed who say the laws of nature have always existed. They don't say that. Now,
Okay, so Darth,
now
wait,
listen
wait,
to
just
me.
wait a
Has
second.
it been proven
Just
to
calm
you?
down. Calm
Yeah,
down, Darth. You're
okay.
getting upset.
Okay.
Okay,
Prove to
just
me.
can I
All
just
we're
ask
talking.
you
Listen to me.
something
Shut your
without you
mouth,
being
or
a
I'm going
jerk?
to kick you. Okay.
Blew up?
Speaking of it being a jerk, you're being a jerk. Now, don't overtalk me.
Not
Do not
me.
overtalk
You.
me.
You're
Now,
the poopy head.
you said, prove to me God exists. You are saying that there is no need to believe in God. God is not necessary because laws of nature are the ultimate. Now, has it been proven to you that the laws of nature...
When they established that, I'm pretty sure they established that because he asked her if that's what she thought, and I think she just said yes to kind of go along. And then ever since then, it's been sort of like him insisting, like, no, that's what you gave me, so that's what you are. One of these people that thinks the laws of nature are absolute and ultimate, and therefore it's your idea of ultimate versus my idea of ultimate, and now you don't know what the scientists say, so you're wrong both ways. Like, I can't tell if he's angry or excited. I guess he could be both. But this is like, I think maybe he's got like a rage boner or something. This is weird.
nature are eternal.
But Darth, I came up here to talk to you. I didn't.
Goodbye. Okay, you see, folks, this is what they do. You
This is
confront
what they
them
do.
with their own words. You confront them with their own standards and their own criterion of belief, and they run away from their own standards. It's obfuscate, obfuscate, rabbit trail, prevaricate, prevaricate. Bicker, 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 bicker. I'm walking you through how your total position is incoherent based upon its own standard. And rather than wake up and...
A standard that you imposed on her. But he asked the question about what her ultimate was, and she went along with it. Like after he kicked her and blew up, she's probably like wondering, like, I don't even know how I was wrong, right? Because I wasn't even committed to 50% of that stuff. Just, if you're having a conversation with somebody like Darth and they're trying to throw this kind of stuff out there and they're not really willing to explain it, like this is what's so frustrating to me about listening to, and this is why I'm fascinated with these guys. If the purpose, Darth takes the opportunity to explain things to you to trap people, right? To trap you, to frustrate you. It's really kind of bizarre. Like there's no education happening here at all. There's no back and forth. There's no charity, right? He has to and I know a lot of us talk about him like having to beat people and having to win, and I'm sure in his psychology that's a big part of it. But whatever this is, whatever he thinks this is about, this is not how a conversation happens. This is really a pathology more than anything else. There's something deeply wrong here. Um, and if Darth knows, well, Darth doesn't know better. But let's say that he does. Let's say that he's got this figured out, and let's say that he's not really inconsistent about a lot of the different philosophical stances he's ripping off. Why isn't he just explaining it to her? Like he can't explain it to anybody, right? Like because I think he knows that if he's too overt in his explanations, he'll get trapped or he'll get yelled at, or people will come out and call him an idiot, which at this point is absolutely true, right? It's sort of one of those things where if it's one of the things problematic about violence. The first person that openly takes a disagreement and becomes violent, well, then violence is now on the table. And now the rules change fundamentally. And I think Darth knows this. Darth has been abusive and aggressive and baiting and switching and trapping and tricking people for at least a decade. Well, not the full 10 years probably. Maybe he was, from what I understand, he was kind of like one of the guys beforehand, but then he, I think, embraced the Bonson stuff and really tried to let it rip on this. But that tactic, he knows that if he tries to be completely honest and express any kind of vulnerability, or maybe this isn't true, maybe there's something wrong with it, I could be wrong about that, blood in the water, all the people that he's pissed off, all the ill will that he's engendered over all this time online, they will be out to get him. So he's trapped.
Smell the coffee, you want to bicker. Okay, so you're gone. You weren't removed from the stage because you disagreed. You were removed from the stage because you were being evasive and deceptive and deceitful.
Another one, Darth. Another one.
It's pretty spicy today, ain't it?
That one question, not a single atheist has actually attempted to answer.
Hey, good to see you, Otangelo.
Oh no.
Yes, hello guys.
Where the heck have you been, man? Good to see you, Otangelo.
Yeah, I traveled a bit. I've been in Israel.
Okay, I'm struggling to pay attention to this because now it's Otangelo and Tomo, the two voices I do not like talking. Where is this going to go?
Yeah.
Oh, you went to the Holy Land?
Yes, I've been.
You went to Palestine?
No, I've just been in Jerusalem, Galilee. Yeah.
The Holy Land is in Missouri. None of these guys have read the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
I was thinking about you the other day, man. I kid you not. I was like, whatever happened to Otangelo? I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, it's quite a while that I'm not joining Clubhouse. It's true.
And where is this going? Anyone?
So, I've seen that Dart just left, right?
That roster gets worse and worse. Yeah, this is getting.
Yeah, maybe he got disconnected.
Oh, Dart's gone. Okay.
Hey, Nick.
Invite an atheist up.
Oh, I think
Nick, are you an atheist?
No, I'm not an atheist. I'm a Christian.
Okay.
He's lying. Yes, he is.
Hey guys.
Hello. What do you believe in?
Me?
Yeah. Like, are you an atheist or?
Yes, I'm an atheist.
Uh-oh. Enemy spotted. What's gonna happen,
So,
Rosie?
I guess
Why?
what kind of prevents you
God does not exist because?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, what kind of prevents you from accepting that Jesus Christ pays for your sins, like, completely and totally?
Nice one, Cascade.
Science.
So there is like a underlying philosophy for science. Like, would you agree?
Yeah, I guess so.
So like you need things like universals. So universals would be that like the speed of light is consistent where you can observe it, and also in places in the universe where you can't observe it, there's also the law of gravity, and that's also consistent even in places we don't observe it. So how can one like assert that universals are actual even if it's in places that we?
I think it's been said, and maybe this has changed some, but I remember seeing this in a lecture from Neil deGrasse Tyson where he was talking about that, and this is based on an estimate that's just kind of ballparked in order to communicate the level to lay people, to people who are not physicists, that they think they understand about 20% maybe of gravity. You know, they've got an understand that, you know, there's another 80% that is still just not understood. So I love it when these guys go right to that in terms of physics. Like, well, it's just like gravity. Like, that's not a comparison you want to make, because there's a lot about gravity that is still yet to be discovered. So don't do that. I mean, I understand his point, but if theists are going to engage with somebody like Rosie, who's basically like, yeah, no, I look to science, I look to empiricism. If you're going to engage with them, you know, this isn't like a gatekeeping thing either. Just like kind of be careful about what you do, because I know what Thea, I think I know where Thea's going to go with this. It's going to be the whole like, oh, you assume you have faith in science, but you don't have faith in God kind of stuff. That's my prediction. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
Don't see them.
I mean, the thing is, like, I was just listening to the discussion that was just happening, and I feel like it's kind of like I feel like science backs up a lot of the reasons that we exist more than a book that was written like so long ago, to the point where like how do we even know where it come from? Like who are you believing here? I want to.
Rosie, neither science nor a book are a causal mechanism. And what we try to elucidate here is how we best can explain our existence. And in order to answer that question, the first thing that you need to put on the table is what are the possible causal mechanisms, okay? And there is a true dichotomy here. Either an intelligent creator was involved or was not involved. And if you say you are an atheist, then you stick to
an intelligent creator. What if there was a creator that wasn't intelligent? What if it turns out that, you know, God is just some kind of great big space slug, just kind of pooped us out and then took off? You know, the weirdest kind of deism. Actually, no, I can come up with some ones that are even weirder, but also X-rated. The fact that Otangelo is going to go here, and sorry for doing that death rattle thing with my throat, that was weird. This idea that like they're gonna like, oh well, here's here's my prediction based on my conversations with Otangelo and what I've seen him do. Because science can't explain everything, science might as well not even try anymore. And we as Christians have an explanation for the reasons for everything, so that's good. We know the why, it's God. And as far as the how, that's great as long as Christian scientists are mapping out the hows for it. You know, that's cute and all, that's mundane. You know, I like having clean water, or maybe we can actually like do something to avert a giant global ecological disaster. That'll be cute and everything, but yeah, the why is God, and we've got, you know, trademark Jesus. So yeah, go team. And until science can take its place in a one-to-one correlation with that, science can just basically, you know, like, you know, eat me whole kind of thing. Like, Otangelo's not going to present it with that much attitude, but that seems to be where most of these guys come from. And again, this is the sort of thing like, yeah, I like the empirical approach to things, actually trying to figure out how things work, and then maybe trying to work out the why as we work out the mechanisms and the how. No, that's not going to satisfy somebody like Otangelo. The why is paramount. The how, incidental.
To the proposition that no God was involved. And that means that no intelligence was involved. And then the follow-up question would be, how do you explain that we can exist without a creator?
Why do we need a creator to exist? A lot of things
No,
exist.
that's not what I asked you. I'm asking you, how can we explain our existence without a creator? You just tried to dodge my question. So can you answer this question, please?
Darling, I didn't dodge anything.
I like that she's calling out Otangelo darling. Like she's gonna like shine him on a little bit. Yeah, Tyler. I was in the room. Tone Look acts like a jackass. Right. This is a complete surprise to me. I titled this one. This one was just titled Darth Dawkins v. Garry, but Rosie here talking to these this clown car. This is interesting. This is a huge bonus. So didn't realize this is here. Gonna go through this, probably play more than comment on it so far. I think this is just gonna be Otangelo trying to talk down the little lady and let her know where science stands in comparison to Christianity.
I'm saying
Okay,
I don't believe. I'm saying I don't believe that everything needs a creator.
I'm not asking you what you do not believe.
What do you want me to tell you? Do you want me to lie?
Yes.
To fulfill your needs?
What I want to know.
Uh-oh, Darth's back. Darth just popped back in. I wonder how long he's going to let Otangelo speak.
From you is how we can exist without a creator.
Well, I mean, even science can barely explain that, and I'm pretty sure Jesus isn't the answer.
Okay, we don't have absolute answers to that question. Okay, we have no access to ultimate reality. We don't know what exists beyond the physical universe. So all we can do is elucidate what the evidence is, and then come to the best possible explanation. And if your answer is that no God is required, then that means logically that you must have an explanation which does not involve an intelligent
But what you just
creator.
said is that there is a possible reason that we exist. So do you believe or not? I'm confused.
Well, there is a reason. It's not about that there is a possible
so
reason.
it 100% is true that God created us.
No, it is a fact
It's
that
fact.
there is a reason that we exist because we are here,
Agreed. Shut
and
up,
we try to
Otangelo.
elucidate what the best explanation is. So
As
you
far as
are
I'm aware, this
helping
is
the
about religion. So I'm going to ask you: do you believe God is the 100% reason?
No,
But
I
Rosie,
believe that
that's
God.
you haven't answered the question that he's put to you,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes. God is the 100%
Can
reason
you
why
invoke facts
we're here.
without reference to God?
He
Got another one. Another one that's like drank the Kool-Aid. Oh boy.
sorry, darling. He hasn't asked me a question. I'm just.
Yes,
I
he
mean,
did.
I
I
do
asked
believe. I
you.
do believe I'm
No,
in a Christianity
I
room.
asked you a question, and it was very clear. How can we exist without a creator?
Okay, so there's many theories about evolution. Do you know evolution?
Evolution doesn't
Does he?
explain the origin of the universe, the laws of physics, fine-tuning, the origin of life, consciousness, moral duties. None of these questions does evolution explain. And even biodiversity, it doesn't explain it adequately. So do you have any
Doesn't?
compelling explanation which is not...
I think evolution does a pretty good job of explaining biodiversity. This makes me doubt. I mean, I've heard Otangelo go on about how evolution's not great, but I've also watched him like kind of confuse it with abiogenesis too. But yeah, if he doesn't think that it accounts for biodiversity, I don't think he really understands theory of evolution very well. So
alternative to an intelligent creator?
I personally believe in the Big Bang.
Okay, what caused the Big Bang into existence? Because the Big Bang had a beginning, right?
Yeah, true, but I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you.
okay, it's a good answer from Rosie. Yeah, and this has been explained to Otangelo before, and I shouldn't pause this any more than I have to. That people have pointed out, the Big Bang is a singularity, which for most physicists means it is a place where math and the laws of physics basically just, as far as our understanding and our limits of our knowledge go, they just kind of cease to function the way we understand. So talking about the Big Bang beginning might not be a very accurate way of describing what it is. We know that at some point the universe that we're in began an expansion. We know that. So if that's what we're talking about, but the big, like, you could always go back, like, how long was the Big Bang sitting there before it went bang, kind of thing. It's called a singularity for a reason. But old Tangela and a lot of these guys will roll out the whole thing. Well, it's an explosion. An explosion has a point of origin, right? Like, yeah, it's not an explosion. I'm going to say it. It's an expansion. Q comments later. I mean, like, that's just special pleading.
Well, you don't. This is a philosophical, not a scientific question. Obviously, whatever begins to exist has a cause. The Big Bang had a beginning, therefore it had a cause. What was, in your understanding, the cause of the Big Bang?
I mean, as you said, you're saying it's philosophical. I don't agree. I kind of think there is a reason. I just don't think that anyone would know.
It's not about knowing. We are trying to find the best explanation.
Right.
Okay, so we're just looking for any explanation, and the best one that we can fit in there that kind of gives us like a good feeling? Like, this is transparently awful from Otangelo. Oh, no, it's not about whether or not we know it or not. We just need to appeal to the best explanation. Oh, okay, so an intelligent super being that transcends time and space created all of us for a purpose, and that's why everything is the way it is, despite all of the problems that's going to engender later as we start trying to figure out what that being is, and we start trying to suss out what its purpose is and how it thinks and any of these other kinds of things that are getting attributed to it, almost as if it's a superhuman and not some completely different kind of entity. There's shitloads of issues with this, and yeah, I mean, it's always Otangelo's really always about this. It's always this kind of push for it. Like, he needs an answer. He needs the why answered, and he's always going to go with God. He is, again, the how doesn't really seem to matter to him, which is why I think he picks on evolution, because evolution really isn't about why. He seems to think that atheists and scientists think that it explains why, even though the majority acknowledge that that's not the case. It explains a lot of hows, and he didn't give a shit about that.
Right. Okay. Well, you're not gonna get that from me.
But Rosie, you've made a decision already to say that it's not God that caused the Big Bang.
But that's up
What's
to
the
me.
reason for saying it's not? Yeah, you must have a reason for that belief.
I think a lot of people have different reasons.
What's yours?
I personally, as you can see in my picture, I don't know if you guys can, have a cross around my neck. That was a picture a while ago. I used to be a Christian. I was raised a Christian, and have a very strong Christian family. And unfortunately, some things happened in my life that I couldn't believe that God would ever or should ever let that happen. I fail to understand why things happen the way they do, such as deaths. If God is this,
So
amazing.
suffering, would you say suffering and evil are your reasons for not believing in God?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. But I mean, hey, you could finish your statement out, Rosie. Like, go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, sorry. Did you say that to me?
Yeah, I was just saying you could go ahead and finish your statement, like what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean that's something that, like, as I said, I was a Christian. I've been in that position too. I've just been proven by so many different people and different beliefs that something greater made this just doesn't seem right when you put together all the suffering that happens in the world and the random deaths of babies that are unexplainable. And how could you say there's something out there? What made you deserve to live, and the 9-month-old baby girl didn't deserve it? What made God give you the purpose but he didn't give her the purpose? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Alice, vejo que eu vou estar querendo. Vou estar ligando aqui.
I think we're hearing Otangelo in his native Brazil.
But yeah, with regards to
Portuguese.
what do you call it, like suffering, and I'm sorry to hear that you have been going through suffering and whatnot. The Bible says that God works all things together for good, right, for those who love Him. So nothing is wasted, right? It's not that we go through suffering and it's for no reason, but yeah, everything happens for a reason. And a good story to read about this from the Bible is Genesis 37. So
I want to point out that despite the fact that Theo has been, for the most part, very polite to Rosie, one could maybe describe it as gentlemanly, he is now being very condescending, right? This is condescending. He's now trying to read to her from Genesis. She's already told them that in her picture, she's wearing a cross. Asked them if they noticed that she was a Christian, she was in a Christian family, and she's lost her faith. And this is one of those things that I don't understand, because Rosie might be in this particular situation too, where she was just raised in a Christian family and she just always grew up believing, and then when she started thinking about these kinds of things and ran into something like the problem of evil, the problem of suffering, she starts dealing with that, and it starts eroding her sense of faith. Okay? Doesn't mean she's ignorant of the Bible, and yet Theo has now shown up and he's talking to her as if she's not acquainted with it at all. I really don't understand what these guys think. Like, they either think that anybody that's that deconverted has just has had total amnesia about the book they read. The book actually kind of informs some of the issues that people like Rosie have when the problem of suffering becomes a real stumbling block for them in their faith. So this is just sort of that patronizing Christian stuff. Like, and the reason that I dislike it is because oftentimes, if it's a younger guy like Theo, he's probably been a Christian for 6-7 years, relatively recent, maybe got into it when he was in college or something, early 20s or whatever, been rolling in it, and then acts like anybody that shows up that's like, no, I'm an atheist, even after they tell him, like, yeah, I spent the first 25, 35 years of my life as a Christian, he'll treat them like they're, like they're a noob. Right? Like, in comparison, Rosie's probably like, she was born in that stuff. Theo's just a tourist. Now, if Theo's always been raised in it and he's old school, never had any doubts, been one from a kid, great. He's still patronizing her. Like, this is still fucking obnoxious. Like, don't talk to former believers like they don't know what the Bible is. Maybe ask them first. This is like JRobin. I don't know how many times I've had to tell JRobin that I was believed in God for the first 30 years of my life and was raised in multiple churches, grew up with it, never had any doubts about the existence of God. But the last conversation we had, he wanted to read me Romans 1. Like I'd never heard of Paul, never cracked the New Testament. Like, just amazing, these guys.
It's the story of Joseph.
Do you know Joseph, Rosie?
But yeah, so it's the story of Joseph, right?
Say it together.
So essentially,
with Theo.
what happened with Joseph is that his brothers they hated him and they sold him into slavery, even while he was faithfully slavery, and then he continued to faithfully serve God under Potiphar, and he was then falsely accused of attacking a lady, thrown into jail, where he suffered, and I'm sure he prayed to God, "Hey God, why am I here?"
Thank you for that, Alex. Yep, you're absolutely right. But if you read the Bible correctly, you'd be Christian, and you can take that tautology to the bank.
But eventually, he was elevated to a place where he's second in command to only the Pharaoh, and he was put in that place to help save many lives because a famine was coming, and with God's help, he was able to predict that famine was coming, and he was able to store grain in the 7 years of plenty for grain and food, in the 7 years of plenty for the 7 years of famine. And when his brothers came,
She's being very patient about this. I would probably be yelling, like, yeah, I told you, I was raised in churches. I know the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors and his brother's treachery and how he made a big deal out of himself when he was sold into slavery and eventually, working with the Pharaoh. I, I'm acquainted with the tale. I've heard it. I've heard it told maybe once or twice. Any kid that got brought up in church knows damn well who Joseph is. The fact that he's just going on about this, like, I don't know if you've heard about this crazy cool story. Like, that's like somebody like walking up to you and just rattling on about like, oh, do you like movies? Well, yeah, I like movies, but I haven't seen any good ones recently. Well, there's this movie called The Matrix, and then just proceeds to give you the entire like, what the hell are you talking? Of course, I've seen The Matrix.
to visit him because there was famine all over the land, he said to them, "That what you meant for evil, God used for good." So the suffering
okay.
in our lives.
This is a common one that these guys go to, and this is always kind of shitty, right? There's a real problem with this kind of notion of God being, in this case, kind of a moral ultimate or morally perfect. If you explain away suffering as if the suffering of an individual, right, like, so in this particular situation, Joseph's story, he suffers because his brothers betray him, right? But his suffering ends up directly benefiting him. And then Joseph's then in a position later on to benefit his family by extension because of the power and influence he gains, right, through God's blessing or whatever. The issue that Theo is probably going to dodge, though, is whether or not if God uses the suffering of others for the benefit of others, right? So, yeah, that person, they had to die and suffer horribly as an example to the people that I wanted to save. That wouldn't be morally perfect because then God would be using some of his humans as a means to an end, right? So if it's really morally perfect, it has to be about the suffering that God tolerates you going through has to be a benefit to you, not to, it's not enough if God turns on like, yeah, the reason that person, regardless of their salvation status, had to be tortured on camera and then brutally executed was because I needed a little old lady in Nebraska to see that on the news and finally reconvert back or something like that, whatever crazy story it is. That is not cool, right? God's using suffering as a means to an end to get a person to convert. I think there are a lot of Christians that believe this. If you believe that everything works towards his purpose, I think you have to kind of believe that. But then that ends up making God, I think, less than morally perfect.
Lives, it's not like wasted, but rather it's like a chess piece, like a chess piece on a chessboard. God was moving Joseph like one square at a time, or one place at a time, until he was where he needed him to be in.
Yeah, exactly. Christopher Mount, like making veal suffer to make it more delicious. Yeah, and sorry vegans for seeing that, but there are people that do that. Yeah, Clubhouse. I might have cut that video short if I'd known you'd like to review Theo, and I kept more of it on. Yeah, I wasn't aware that this. Again, I can't see any of these conversations, Clubhouse, because well, JRobin and Darth have me blocked. So if they're ever in there, I can't ever get in, and even after they leave. And it doesn't look like, I don't think that Darth comes back. It looks like he left and he's just leaving this up to Theo. But there's only a couple more minutes of this. I'm gonna play this thing out because somebody had mentioned that tone, maybe this is captured in here. Tone gets kind gets kind of snarky with Rosie here.
Wherever we are, like God is using us. Like that's the right, like that's like a right place where He can use us to help people. But yeah, like through suffering, like people learn things like about themselves, about other people, and they can use it to help other people. So like for example, if someone struggled with alcoholism, and then they overcome it, then they can reach back to other people who are struggling with that, and say, hey, I know what it's like. There's a way out. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and they can relate to them, like because they understand that sort of struggle, right? That sort of pain. So yeah, like our struggles, they aren't for no reason, and God ultimately.
But what's the point of a 4-year-old dying of some kind of river, in pain and agony of some kind of river parasite, due to unclean water, in whatever country? How does that benefit that child? Like, we're not supposed to be, these guys have a strong stance on this kind of stuff, right? You're not supposed to, they don't believe in elective abortion for the most part. Many of them don't believe in elective abortion even in cases of rape and incest. I'm not saying that Theo doesn't, but, a lot of Christian fundamentalists don't. But in the cases of like, oh, well, okay, that little girl over there, yeah, that died screaming and suffering from starvation and parasites and whatever else was ravaging her, yeah, that was for her benefit. How? How did that benefit her, right? And if it benefited her because, well, without that suffering, she wouldn't have cried out to Jesus and been saved. Think about that. If that's what they think is necessary, then God puts you through real terror here sometimes to get you to convert. And maybe that's a good thing because, well, you wouldn't want your soul to go to the eternal torture place, which he's also established. So a lot wrong with what Theo's kind of setting up here. And yeah, I agree with Alex, the way he kind of presented the Joseph story. Not good, not complete.
Uses everything together for good. And the Bible even compares this world to like childbirth, where it says that while giving birth to a child, like the
I think that's it. I think he's wrapping up. Yep. Nerds. I was hoping he was going to get into the tone thing because I think Tyler had mentioned that tone got kind of snippy with Rosie there. But all right, well I guess that's it. So well, that's interesting. I'd never seen Rosie in any of those things, but again, I don't know exactly who's hanging out on those things because I'm persona non grata there. But thanks everybody for showing up. I'm going to wrap this up because I've been going a little longer than I intended to, so I'm going to try to keep this at 2 hours. Yeah, thanks for showing up. Thanks for the comments. Marty Kameha. Nice to see you, Marty. Thanks for joining. Yeah, Clubhouse says, let me know if you need material. Yeah, anything that you get, especially in some of these ones. I know that you did I think you recorded a big snippet of JRobin and Darth live either today or yesterday that I might go over tomorrow. Other than that, I'm not going to get into, I don't know what's going to be going on this weekend because I've got a few things going on. If I've got some free time, if I'm up early in the morning, I might be doing an early show to kind of go over some stuff, just kind of like, for breakfast, for tea or whatever. Drink, get caffeinated and watch something goofy, catch up on a few longer videos. We'll see. If not, I doubt I'm going to have anything happening. Will not have anything happen Saturday night. I'll be out of town. Sunday I'll probably be busy as well. If I'm not, I might be on Discord with some of that group. But lately I haven't been making it into those. That's the ones that Randolph Richardson and J.L. Warren and Jack Barton is in. I may not be able to make it to that one because it might be happening a little too early. But Monday. So far, so good. Going to get it scheduled here. Part 3, Michael from the Canadian Atheist and I are hopefully going to wrap up our review of his conversation from about a month ago now with JRobin. So we're going to wrap that up. I want to kind of finish that up. He's been busy with real life stuff, so we can kind of envy him. I've just had work and then this. So because the weather is terrible, there's almost nothing to do outside right now. Anyway. That's just me feeling bad for myself. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I hope you have a great night. I hope you have a good weekend. For anybody who's international, have a great, whatever it is. If you're earlier, you got hopefully you got a great weekend to look forward to. If it's later, I hope it's going good for you. Thank you for all your comments, and you guys always keep it entertaining. So I hope all of you can join me next time I'm on here. Again, it might be Saturday morning. If not, I think somebody that I know, Carlton Winston, is probably going to be doing a video tomorrow covering D. Roy Cruz, who is pretty entertaining. So if you don't see me on here, I might be over there. Anyway, take care, everybody. Good night. Stay safe.